Hello, my name is Dr. Mark Allen Dery, and I am the Medical Director of Infectious Diseases and Chief Innovation Officer for Access Health Louisiana. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I serve as co-chair for the ACOI Infectious Diseases Subspecialty Section. You've seen me do these updates now for the past few months, and in conjunction with the ACOI and their amazing leadership, I hope these messages are helping you to keep up with the latest on COVID-19. I know many of you are in the thick of the fight. I would like to thank you on behalf of all of us who daily focus on infectious diseases for a living, and certainly on behalf of the ACOI. Moving forward, together with the ACOI, we will continue to share information as it becomes available, as well as some of the hopeful progress that we are seeing. So on to some stories. I think that the number one story that is capturing everyone's imagination, with the exception of a vaccine, is we'll get to that in a second, is the new strain of COVID-19. So with the virus that's raging on everywhere in the U.S., we are seeing places like California totally straining their ability to keep up with ICU space, having enough personnel to handle it. In fact, on one of my other shows today, somebody called in from California. It was an ER doctor to tell us that they are now doing their ER triage in a parking garage. And I'm sure that many of you are experiencing things like this as well. And as always, thank you so much for the amazing work that you do. They're preparing for even more of a strain on hospitals in Orange County, where they're erecting mobile field hospitals, which is a way, which by the way is a term used in war, which is exactly what this seems like. Last week in Orange County alone logged a record single-day total of 4,600 cases. It seems as if there's no end in sight, and for Disney lovers, yes, Disneyland and California Adventure, which is the theme park right next to it, remain closed. In fact, California is having its own tragic adventure with numbers that are making it necessary to erect tents to hold additional patients. Places like University of California at Irvine and their medical center, which, by the way, used to be that used to be a DO medical school, and that medical center used to be a DO medical school. Look it up; it's real. When you walk into the UC Irvine Medical School library, there's actually the DO. The charter for that medical school was a DO school. Anyway, that's California in the 60s. They went crazy. Whole other story. Anyway, at UC Irvine, they're not only building temporary tent structures, but also the temporary utility lines and other infrastructure necessary to make them functional. And as of this past week, there's been more than 600,000 Americans that have received their first COVID-19 vaccine. That's right. Oh, wait a second. It's so weird when it's backwards. All I want for Christmas is a vaccine. We'll get to that. I'm not one of those 600,000, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm seeing on the ACOI social media feed that many of you are sending photos of you getting the vaccine. That's amazing. Again, I haven't done mine yet. Hopefully soon. But I'll definitely be submitting my photographs as well to the ACOI. All right, now, while the first wave of shots have gone far into the healthcare system with respect to vaccinating healthcare workers and nursing home residents, as well as top government officials, we are waiting for it to be available to Americans, other Americans in non-essential jobs, yet this is likely to be months before this happens. Now, many countries, including Canada, have put a travel ban in place restricting flights from the UK. Now, why the UK? Because there has been a new variant of a virus that's been discovered. Now, I have typically avoided talking about mutations, and none of those stories have really come to fruition. This is the real deal. This virus is much more transmissible. Fortunately, does not have the same lethality associated with it. So this is why Canada has put travel bans on the UK. But a lot of other countries are doing it. But the White House Coronavirus Task Force has no plans to restrict travel from the UK. States are all taking their own individual approach. Washington State has ordered a 14-day quarantine from travelers arriving from the UK, and New York has asked airlines to add the state to a list of 120 countries that are requiring COVID-19 screenings for arriving passengers. In fact, just last night in Mumbai, India, you had folks that got tested to get on the flight. And then when they got off of the flight, when they got to India, they had to get tested again, and 15 people with this new variant strain were discovered. So in the interim of getting a PCR test to board the flight, so let's say 3 days before, and your test was negative, and then you get to India and you get tested positive, they picked up on 15 cases. This is how infectious this new variant is, and apparently the variation happens in the subunit of the spike. One of the subunits makes it so that it attaches to cells much easier. So anyway, so back to the U.S. Many are saying that this should be U.S. policy, and it should. I am certain that this new I think that this new strain is very likely to be the dominant strain that's going to very likely take over here in the U.S. with respect to potentially taking over the ecological niche that the original strain has had. Anyway, long story, U.S. policy should just be a federal policy, not a state-by-state policy. It almost seems as though this has been a patchwork of response to begin with anyway, with the whole pandemic, and quite frankly, it's not a surprise that we're seeing a state-by-state response from the UK. So now, does the UK virus and the variant rather that has not been identified through sequencing efforts in the US, according to the CDC, but it is expected, as announced by the Pfizer CEO, the vaccine will be effective against this new strain. The other thing to know, here's the big talking point, and probably the most important, is that the subunit of where that mutation happened, that was a target for the PCR test. So now that we're dealing with a potential new variation, I've always talked about COVID-22, and we're getting COVID-19, part 2, right, happening right now. But that subunit is missing that PCR target. So it could be that we could be getting false negative tests. Anyway, back to being zen, right? Here's my moment of zen. All right, so let's talk about the vaccine. There's been a million questions, so we thought that we would take some time to answer some of these questions, and so let's go ahead and do that. So with the vaccine being created in record time, there's naturally efficacy and safety concerns, so it's important to understand a few things. One is that many of the obstacles related to vaccine development are actually due to a lack of funding, which this vaccine obviously had no problem with. There have been plenty of funds have been raised by both the government and by the pharmaceutical industry. Even Dolly Parton, we love Dolly, raised $1 million. She donated $1 million, and this is being credited for such a quick, speedy vaccine. I'm glad she's working 9 to 5 to have the money to donate. I thought that was a funny joke. It was very funny, Gina. All right. The good news, too, is that the vaccine good news about the vaccine is that while it is true that people in vulnerable communities were not signing up for understandable reasons to vaccine trials. In the past, this has not been the case at all with this effort. Communities of color were well represented in these trial groups. Now, understanding that these vaccines are different requires our patients to understand that it is an mRNA approach that makes this vaccine different. It's that the messenger RNA obviously is being brought into the individual cell, the muscle cells that go directly into the ribosome. And of course, that mRNA is like the Snapchat of DNA. It just disappears. And once it gets into the ribosome, it creates the spike protein, and then that spike protein then, of course, is then pushed to the surface of the cell, and then there's an immune response that is created as a result of that. So I like to think of this as a organic vaccine, if you will, because your body makes all of the components of this vaccine. Your body makes the antigen, and then makes the antigen through cellular parts and ingredients that are found in the cell, and then of course creates an immune response as a result of that. So I refer to this as an organic vaccine when I talk to patients about this. All right, so other comments that we get is, can I get the virus from the vaccine? And while we know that many other vaccines are weakened form of the virus, this one, of course, is not. The mRNA contains only the instructions to make that spike protein that we have talked about before. Probably one of the most important things that we need to recognize is that there's going to be some adverse effects as a result of this, and you have to explain to your patients that the adverse effects that you're seeing is just your immune system working. So you have to understand that that there is going to be some adverse effects. It's all a function of your immune system working. Now, probably the biggest question is, will this vaccine end the pandemic? The answer is yes, but it won't be all of a sudden. The ending of the epidemic requires widespread vaccination. The percentage of people that need to be vaccinated to receive herd immunity is anywhere between 70 to 80%. So please still be vigilant. You still need to wear your mask after you get vaccinated. Please continue the social distancing. Please continue to wash your hands. For me, all I want for Christmas is a vaccine. So happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. Stay on the lookout for regular updates, and to hear and read more from the sources used in this report, go to the acoi.org/COVID. Whoa, totally wrong. acoi.org/COVID-19. Together with the ACOI, will help you keep up on the latest information so you can respond to your patients and stay on top of the crisis. Please feel free to reach out to me at madery@mac.com. Please stay safe. We can do this together.